changers.
Hey guys, welcome back to Resistance Chicks. We're your hosts, Leah and Michelle. You're tuning in for a very special episode of The Outliers. We have with us Rafi Farber. He's a sound money guy, and I want to say he's one of the leading voices in sound money today. And I'm so thankful that he's on our show. We're not going to just talk about gold and silver. We're not just going to talk about sound money and the destruction that the fiat dollar has had on the world. We're going to talk about a lot of things. We were talking about God before we got on. He's literally in the Middle East. We were talking about everything that's going on over there and the instability. We're going to have a phenomenal time today. But Rafi, I want you to, first of all, welcome to the show. But I would love for you to tell our viewers who maybe they've never heard of you, maybe they don't even know, what to make of a guy that whose sole channel is for just sound money. I know you do a lot more than that. Your channel is called the Endgame Investor on YouTube, and we're going to make sure that everybody knows how to find you throughout the program. But tell people who you are, how you got into this, and where you're at, which I think is also super cool to have you on the program from the Middle East.
Okay, so I'm from Miami. I'm from the United States, Florida. And I came here in 2007 because a girl pulled me in. And
so what is that?
Yeah. So I went to elementary school with my wife. I didn't really talk to her back then, but she Facebooked me in 2007, and I was in New York at a rabbinical school I shouldn't have been at, and it's a different thing. But I'm not a rabbi, but I'm yeshiva educated, so I know a lot of the sources, but I never did the official like rabbinical doctorate or anything like that.
Gotcha.
So I came here in 2007. We got married a few months later. In July 2008, and then we put all our money in the market, and then 2 months later was September 2008. We lost like 3/4 of it.
Oh,
and I didn't.
Wow.
It's okay. And then I was like, okay, wait a second, something just happened here, and I have to figure this out. So I decided like I have to figure out what the hell's going on, why this is happening. So I read some stuff, some sources about the dollar and money, and none of it made any sense to me because it was all macroeconomics, Keynesian bullshit. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. And then I'm doing the long form here because we have an hour. So I recall it was one night, maybe in 2011, and I was still looking for answers. And I ended up on ronpaul.com, which is like it was a fan generated blog for his material, and I didn't know who this guy was. I was a moderate Republican. I started off as a Democrat in high school, and then I was like getting more and more right wing because they were getting weirder and weirder. And so I ended up like a neocon Bush guy, and then I found ronpaul.com. Because I was researching partial birth abortions because I didn't know what those were.
Really?
And I didn't know why people were so up in arms about them. It sounded bad. I just never looked at it.
Okay.
And then Ron Paul, because he's an obstetrician, had all these posts about it. And then and then it was like pictures and I was like horrified.
Wow.
It's like people do this.
Wow.
They suck brains out of babies while they're being like, I couldn't believe Americans would do something like this or allow this. Like, why can't you just have the baby and then give it to someone if you can't take care of it? Why would you kill it? And then it was like an exposure to evil that I didn't even know existed, and I wanted to throw up. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, okay, well, who's this guy, Ron Paul? And then all of a sudden he was talking about economics and money and this and that. And I was like, oh my God, he's right. and then I was like, what does he think about Israel? Because I'm in Israel. So like I typed in on the blog, Ron Paul Israel. So he's like, well, Ron Paul believes that if Israel wants to defend itself against Iran, against a nuclear attack, he would even support a nuclear first strike on Iran. I'm like, that's insane. Why? Who says that? I'm not saying
Libertarian Ron Paul.
Yeah, I'm not saying that we should go and nuke Iran. I'm not saying that we should do that. I'm saying like, what kind of American politician will even say something like this? Right. And then I went into a deep rabbit hole. I don't think I slept that night, and I learned all the basic videos on his channels and whatever about Austrian economics and what it was. And why it was so attractive to me is because, again, I have a yeshiva background, rabbinical school background, and Jewish law is based on first principles. It's philosophical arguments based on certain foundations. And then you go there on a logical progression to where Jewish law is today. So it's the same sort of thinking, same sort of logical progression. It's not an empirical study, really, although empiricism does have a place in it, as evidence for certain principles. So I looked at all the books on Austrian economics. I found that this guy, I'm wearing the shirt because he wanted to talk about Austrian economics. This is Murray Rothbard. He did not like Israel at all. He actually hated it, and I forgive him for that. It's okay. I don't really like it so much either. I hate the government here too, but this is my country, so
Right,
I got
I
to
get it.
suffer with the government you have. Then I read all about Austrian economics, and it was very appealing to me. So at the time, I was doing like biotech research, and then when COVID hit, this is another weird story. I have these Hasidic friends in my neighborhood. A lot of them are anti-vax. And I wasn't, because like I figured, vaccines make sense. My kids are fine. I didn't really, but I was already a hardcore libertarian. So, I remember sitting down, this is like February 2020 or something like that, like very, very soon before the lockdowns. And he was trying to talk to me about vaccines and polio and this. I was like, look. I was like, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I believe they're fine and they work and they're good and we should all have them. But if the government ever tries to make you do that or make you put that in your kids and you don't want to, I promise you I will be on your side 100%.
Wow.
And that's exactly what happened.
And
like,
then you got your
2
opportunity.
months later. Yeah. And like God was like, all right, okay, let's test that out. Yeah. And then like once 2020 hit and all the lockdowns came in, and then I saw where they were going with the vaccine. And I knew like instinctually, like they're going to do this in a rush job. It's going to be approved and they're going to make everybody take it. I knew it from the beginning. And then I was like, I really gotta fight the hell out of this. And that's around when I started the Endgame Investor.
Okay.
So I was like in this rabid state of like, it's all connected to the money, and all this evil is coming from the money. Because why is it all connected to the money?
It is.
Because the money is where all the corruption, it funds the corruption. The funding to all the corruption is the money itself.
Exactly.
And because you can print it, you can send it to whoever the hell you want.
Yes. Right.
And then direct it back to you, and then it creates this monster of corruption everywhere.
Yes.
It just gets worse and worse and worse. And so my mission became like a religious mission. Like I have to not only explain sound money, I have to explain how it's connected to everything that is happening here.
That's good.
So it all came together. And so what I do on my channel is, I don't talk about, gold's at 2,000, 2,500. So I say that, like I talk about it, but like my point is I want to give people a philosophical background to why gold is money today. Right now, it's still money because it's the basis to the entire monetary system, whether you want to say it is or not. Right.
Write that down. Sometimes, a lot of times we take notes when we interview people. It is the basis of, what did you say? Repeat that, Rafi. Can you?
Gold is money is the most liquid commodity in an economy, right? It has to be, because prices cannot be controlled. You can't have price control. So if you can't have price control, because what do prices do? Prices are supposed to give you a signal for what is missing in the economy, what there's too much of,
That's really good.
what needs to be done, what doesn't need to be done, so people know what to do in the morning when they get up and go to work.
Yeah.
Right? That's every price does that. But if you say that fiat money exists, that it's just a piece of paper or a digit that people agree on, well, then what you're saying is that when you introduce that money into everything, it's price controls of everything, because what you're just determining how many units of nothingness each thing is.
That's really good.
That's not price control of one thing. That's price control of the entire economy, which is beyond impossible. Price control of one thing is impossible. Kal v'chomer, a fortiori, prices of price controls of everything is 100% impossible. So
Wow.
then you have to ask, what the hell is this thing? And the answer is it's a dollar derivative with a whole bunch of debt behind it,
Yeah.
denominated in the same dollars that are payable in the same gold that the Fed dollar values at $42.22 an ounce because they're lying about it.
Could you
But
sit on that for a second? Because we
yeah.
haven't really talked to it's really interesting. We haven't talked to our viewers too much about the federal price of the $42.50 versus
That's
the
yeah,
spot
that's
price. Could
a
you explain that a little bit?
Phew. Okay. The problem is like my mind gets filled with like the current chatter, and then I kind of forget like where this all began. So the $42.22 an ounce, like before there was any before there were the Fed started buying debt, right? Uh, the Federal Reserve was basically a big storage house for gold certificates, right? In 1933, FDR stole all the gold
Right.
and then stuffed it into three places, into Denver and Fort Knox and West Point, I think. And then the Fed couldn't print. They wanted to inflate their way out of the depression instead of letting prices keep falling. So in order to inflate their way out of the depression, statutorily they needed more. The Fed needed more gold with which to print more money off of. So they imagined that if they just hand out more money, then things would get better because that's what was missing. There wasn't enough money.
Right.
The problem was there was too much money, and they printed money in the 20s, way too much of it, and then the whole price structure got messed up because they were printing too much money, which is the other side of debt. And then when you have too much money in the economy that people can't pay, if the money is the debt and it's two sides of the same coin, then when people stop paying that debt because they don't have enough money, well, then the debt goes away and the money goes away. And then you're left with a price structure that's based on a higher money supply with now a smaller money supply, and all the prices are wrong, right? So that means people get laid off, and then you have a depression, and then it takes time to readjust. So instead of letting it readjust, FDR decided to, make all these public work projects, and then he funded it with inflation. And then in order to keep inflating, he needed more gold because the Fed couldn't print more money without the gold to back it. So he stole it all, and that's what really happened.
Right.
In 1971, Nixon by then everyone from FDR to Nixon had printed too much money to fund all the wars, especially Vietnam was a big one because that was unwinnable and crazy. So after all this printing, like the foreign central banks were redeeming redeeming their dollars for gold, and gold was draining out. And so Nixon closed the gold window and said, "Well, we're just not going to give any more gold anymore, and we're just going to pretend that it's $42.22 an ounce."
Unbelievable.
Right. And what's the point of pretending that it's $42.22 an ounce? Well, the gold in the Fed is gold that you cannot get,
Right.
because there's no access to it. So if the dollar is still gold, and it still is, it's mostly like 95% debt garbage,
Right.
because of all the debt that was issued. But when you take all that away, there's still supposedly gold in all these places that the Fed has certificates that are based on that stuff. And so when it goes away, when the debt goes away, you're left with the gold. And that's what's going to happen in the end game. It all goes back to that. And then the whole Tower of Babel falls over, and you're left with just the gold again. So there's going to have to be some kind of a revaluation by the market that the money supply is like 20 trillion something. So if gold is $42.22 an ounce and the money supply is like $22 trillion, there's not enough gold in the solar system to redeem all those claims. So
Right.
there's two ways to deal with that. Either you let all the banks fail, all the deposits disappear, the money supply shrink back to what it was in 1933, which you thought the depression of 1929 and 1933 to 1945 was bad. Imagine a depression based on the money supply shrinking by 3 orders of magnitude. It's like everybody loses everything. Or you could just inflate everything out, and then the dollar loses almost all of its purchasing power, and all the purchasing power goes into gold anyway. However the purchasing power goes into gold, whether because most of the money supply disappears or because the money supply gets inflated to such a degree that the dollar is worthless, it's all the same thing.
So
That's what people are talking about now, that they're talking about auditing the Fort Knox, in that the gold in Fort Knox is valued at the $42.
Yes.
And so what would that even mean if they had to reevaluate the gold in Fort Knox?
Well, let's put it this way. So I was saying that gold is valued statutorily at $42.22, but that's gold you cannot get. So if there's if there's a revaluation to, let's say, mark to market. So what is gold now? 29.50, 29.60?
something like that,
So
yeah.
let's say Trump says, okay, now the gold in Fort Knox is valued at 29.60. Well, then what happens to the price of gold? That means that the gold in Fort Knox, you still can't get it because the gold window is still closed. So gold that you cannot get is 29.60 an ounce. So then what does that do to the market price of gold that you actually can have, right?
Wow.
It rises by orders of magnitudes from 29.60, let's say, like 20,000 in about 2 or 3 days.
Isn't that roughly
And
what it should be anyway, if it wasn't so suppressed and artificially kind of controlled?
yeah, we can talk about the suppression and the artificial control. It's not exactly artificially controlled. It's sort
You know
of
what I
is.
mean, though. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not a true value.
So what you would define as, like, what's the fair value of it? The thing is, we talked about price controls, right? So the hallmark of a price control is very simply, let's say you go to a store and they have like a sale on tomatoes, right? Instead of what's the price of tomatoes now in Ohio?
Oh, that's such a great
What,
question.
like $1.99 a pound?
That's what I'd guess.
Okay,
Yeah.
so $1.90 a pound. So let's say let's say there's like this sale on tomatoes, and they put it down to like 40 cents a pound, right? And then you see in the vegetable aisle, tomatoes are 40 cents a pound, limit 5 pounds per customer, right? That's a shortage. That means, why are they limiting you? Because if you're going to try to take advantage of this and buy all the tomatoes, no one else is going to have any, which means the price for tomatoes that they're giving at that sale, for whatever reason, let's say they got to get rid of the stock or something, it's below the market price. That causes a shortage. That means they're limiting you. You can't buy as much as you want. That's a shortage. So if there was really, if the price of gold were really being manipulated and controlled, then there would be a gold shortage. There'd be like a jewelry shortage. You wouldn't be able to buy a wedding ring. You wouldn't be able to buy gold necklaces. That you go to the jewelry store, you say, we're out of gold today. That's not happening. So the price of gold is not being controlled in that way. However, there's two prices of gold, right? There's gold. There's the industrial price of gold,
Right.
which is pretty fair, which is why you can still get your jewelry and whatever else you need gold for. If a dentist needs to buy a supply for, I don't know, for dental fillings or whatever he uses it for, you can get it. There's no shortage. But the monetary price is the price where, imagine in a world where nobody trusts the dollar anymore, and therefore they don't trust any other currency because every other currency is backed by the dollar. That's what reserve currency means. That's what it means. Since post World War II, every other central bank, America conquered the world, basically, was in charge of everything, and said, here, take our dollars. You can build your money supplies on this dollar thing. And then if you ever want your gold back, you can redeem the dollars for gold at 42, right? Or 35 or whatever it was at that point. So, wait, I lost my train of thought. What was it? Where was it?
Yeah, so
Shortage. Okay.
Yeah.
So two prices for gold. The monetary price for gold is, let's say that central banks and everybody, they don't want their gold, they don't want their derivatives anymore. They don't want their dollars. They want to get their gold back. So what would the price of gold have to be if everyone who had dollars sent them all in to get any amount of gold? What would the exchange rate be? Right? Now, there could be a lot of different ones. There could be, to cover the entire money supply, it would have to be like $60,000 if you're going to divide, $22 trillion by
such a great
8,000
point.
tons,
Yeah.
right? Or it could be if Trump is going to allow the banks to fail, maybe, well, then then the gold would have to back the amount of the amount of assets on the Fed's balance sheet, which is about 6.8 trillion, less than the money supply, because the money supply pyramid's on top of the Fed's money supply. That would be about 30,000.
Wow.
So it depends. It depends what's going to happen. But the point is, it doesn't matter what the dollar price is going to be.
Love it.
The end game is going to be, you're gonna go to the store and things are going to be priced in ounces, right? In ounces of gold and ounces of silver. That's what they're going to be priced in. Nobody's going to care about the dollar.
And it should be, and that's where we get to, and a lot of people, I don't know how you feel about Bitcoin, but I feel about it the way Lynette does. So she's really bold about it.
Or any kind of digital currencies.
Money itself
Wait,
is.
but like pro Bitcoin or anti Bitcoin?
We're very anti Bitcoin. Any kind of digital currency.
So-
If you like, and Lynette always holds it up, and she's like, if you can't hold it, you don't own it. Like that's our stance.
Right. Okay,
on,
so I have something important to say about that, but continue your question.
Yeah. So when it comes to money, a lot of like, especially with the Bitcoin craze, is people have gotten into Bitcoin because they think it's an investment, whereas the supposed initial foray into Bitcoin was supposed to be another transaction of money. The stability of money, the stability of the value of money to not go up and not go down is what makes a society sound, is what makes everything tick. What makes what you're talking about prices and price versus price controls and sort of a capitalist type market only works when the money stays the same. And I know we talk about wealth preservation with the gold, and as you were talking about, yes, maybe you're going to come out on top as a stacker, and you will, but it's not supposed to be that way. The idea is, I'm with you. This dollar should be a dollar. Okay, this should not be an investment. It's money. It's a means of exchange, and so it's hard for people to wrap their brain around the fact that that this is not in it. This should not be a place where you're putting investment, because we need to be using this as money. The problem is when they have inflated it to this point where they don't they're not even printing anymore. There's just zero, 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 zeros. We only have faith in this idea that, 3% inflation, and now wherever we're at here in America, which is a lot more than 3, I can tell you that. Okay. And it's painful and it hurts, but people don't understand that money, for the first 200 years of this nation, a dollar was a dollar was a dollar. You could actually save a dollar. And 100 years later, it was worth a dollar. And people don't quite understand that. So that was my point.
Right. Okay. So look, about Bitcoin, you have to differentiate between Bitcoin and blockchain. Blockchain is cool. It's probably useful. It's probably also very dangerous, like any technology. And I have no problem with blockchain being used as a way to divide money. But I'll use two analogies here. Like imagine you have like pipes under your house, right? This elaborate plumbing system where pipes go into everyone's house, and you have sinks and you have bathtubs and all this, stuff, or an electricity network or whatever is wires, and there's nothing in them. So then what the hell is the point of the pipes? Like the pipes have value. Why do the pipes have value? Because there's water in them. You need the water. You don't need the pipes. Like a Bitcoin, there's the Bitcoin network is valuable in the sense that it can transfer data. It can transfer claims of ownership on things. But what is a Bitcoin itself? It's nothing. There's nothing there. It's a safe that you find the code to it, you open it, inside is another safe, and you open that one, and inside that is another safe, and it just keps going and going and going. There's nothing
That's a good
in
way
it.
to put it.
Okay? Yeah. The other analogy I'll use is a more religious one. Okay? And this you have to kind of open your minds a little bit. So the Pentateuch, right? The first part of the Old Testament, the first 5 books. What's the point of it? Right? So when you get to the first stories, there's one God and he created man, and then man, sinned, and then generations got worse, and then there was a flood, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? So there's a medieval rabbi named Maimonides, and I think St. Thomas Aquinas was contemporaries with him and quoted his work a lot. I'm not sure what Aquinas wrote. I think his books are famous with Christians also. So
yeah, 100%.
So Maimonides, we call him the Rambam. He says like, what went like the point of the first 5 books we call the Torah is that God is trying to hammer in our heads that we should not worship idols. Okay, stop doing that. There's only one of me, and that's it. So how did this start? So the Rambam asks, how did this start? How do people start worshiping God? What kind of stupid idea is that you put a statue and you bow down to it and you're like, this is God. I just made this thing and now it's God and now I'm bowing down. What are you doing? How did this even happen? Okay. So he says, well, this is how it happened. Adam knew that there was a God. Cain and Abel knew that there was one God because he created them and he talked to them. So it was obvious. And then there was another generation called Enosh, which means man. It's the third generation is Enosh. And he had this idea that God is a little bit far away. So the stars in the sky, like, they serve him. So I'm just going to pray to the stars, and then the stars will tell God what I want, and then, they'll help me. They'll be my middleman. Okay. That's not so crazy. But then it got even weirder. Like, somebody in the next generation said, well, the stars are too far away and, they only come out at night. So I'm going to make like a form for the star, like this circle thing. And I'm going to make it really nice and shine it up and put it in this temple. And then I'm going to ask the statue, I'm going to pray to the statue, and the star will know that the statue is a representation of the star. And then the star will ask God to help me, and then my crops will grow.
Right.
And then what happens generations later is a kid walks into that temple, sees this guy bowing down to this form statue of whatever the hell it is, and says, well, that must be God. But look what happened here. You start with the spiritual, which is God. And then what happens is you make a derivative of it, the stars. Okay, we know with modern science that they're physical, they're just balls of gas, but they didn't know that. They thought they were spiritual. So they're sort of spiritual, sort of physical, some kind of like in-between thing. You get more physical. And then you go down and you make a even more physical thing, right? And then the derivative layers from spiritual to get more and more physical as you get away from God.
That's good.
Okay, now with money, it's the exact opposite. Okay, we're in the physical world. Money is for physical transactions. Okay, you have the spiritual, you have the physical world. Like we're bowing down to idols is crossing the streams, like Ghostbusters. You don't do that. Okay. Now with money, what happens? You start with gold, very very hard physical, one of the heaviest, elements in the world, and then you go to a derivative. You're like, well, gold's heavy. I don't want to carry it, so I'm going to make a piece of paper that will represent it, and I'll put the gold in some guy's house who promises to keep it safe for me. Okay, is it money? No, but it represents it, and if it's honest, okay, you can use it. And now the guy in the bank says, well, I have this thing, I have these certificates. I'll just make more of them so I can buy more stuff. And then if somebody wants the gold, I'll give it to him, but I won't have all of it, but nobody's going to ask for all of it at the same time. So I'll stack more, and I'll put, and then I'll credit his bank account with data. And he has like $10. I'll just tell him that he has, I'll tell him that he has 15, right? But it's not all there, right? If he wants the paper, I'll give him the paper, but it's not all represented in his account. And you get more and more and more spiritual as you go higher and higher in the derivative layers. And then finally, after all of that, after that you have like debt, right? Debt. I'm going to owe you these digits, which don't really exist, which represent the paper, which represents the gold. And then after that, you have Bitcoin, which represents the debt, which represents the deposits, which represent the paper, which represent the gold. You have this entire humongous pyramid, and where is Bitcoin on it? It's at the top.
Wow.
Why is it at the top? And why does it go crazy? Because it's at the top and it's the least stable. And when you're in the stratosphere, you can't breathe. You feel high, you feel drunk, and you don't even know where the hell you are.
That's good.
No, that's really good, and I'm sure
that was beautifully done. By the way,
that was amazing,
really
and that
good.
explains like even the meme coins that with Javier Mele. I'm sure you saw that, like kind of that rug pull as they call it, where people lost a ton of money just overnight. How does that even happen? With the meme coins. Do you know anything about the meme coins versus like the actual Bitcoin? Because I got to tell you, I have a lot of cryptocurrency friends, especially in this circle. When you start to go down the Ron Paul vein and the libertarian vein, I'm sure you found it, that there's a whole bunch of crypto bros and gals now who will say, yeah, but Bitcoin is not like any other cryptocurrency.
Why? Because it was the first one?
I don't know.
Because it's more stable, is
Right.
what people say.
So my opinion on it all is like I think it really lands where you put it. I think that Bitcoin being at the top, it is the most unstable and it's the most farthest away from something physical. My mom actually, literally, we were at a secondhand shop and she picked up this, she cleaned it just to show on our show today with you. And she's got these little forks and spoons. Like she had to clean it up. Like, so we know it's silver because it was gray when she bought it, right? This is real. I hold it in my hand. It is going to have a value. These coins are going to have a value.
Show me your Bitcoin.
Where is the Bitcoin? Like in all of this, like
you show it to me.
I can't even pipes are metal. You talked about the pipes that go through your house to get the water. Like even they are metal. And so what I try to encourage people is, so many times we get told like Leah Michelle, I can't get into gold and silver. Well, Lynette holds up her little what is her little chopsticks that she's got, and she holds up I'm like, listen, you can go to, I think my mom paid like $1 for this, right? I don't know what the value is because it's not going to be 100% silver. That's not the point. The point is that like this is something that has literal value. When you look at like all of the wars, like the Civil War, and people were coming in, and what did they do? They stole the silver. They would come in and they would take take the silver. Why? They didn't come in and go, "Where's your Bitcoin?" They stole the ham, they stole the potatoes, they stole the food, they stole in an end game scenario to the name of your podcast and program. In an end game scenario, no one wants to come and steal your digital currencies. And what's interesting is I think that maybe we could back off the digital currencies. There's the meme coins, there's the Bitcoins, there's cryptocurrencies, there's you talked about blockchain as a whole of what it does in the infrastructure. And then you have the fact that right now my money is in here. It's in the, like, I've got a bank account and it has some digital zeros to it, right? Like even that is it can be gone in an instant. Like it can be. I don't have it in my possession. So then you've got like a paper dollar, and you look at the Civil War, and the money from the South, right? They used that the Confederate dollars to wallpaper people's homes afterwards because it literally had no value left anymore. But what we find throughout history is that the silver and the gold has always had, from the beginning of time. You went back to the Torah. The silver is mine. The gold is mine. Like in the beginning, you had this gold that God talked about. It's his. Like God, you want to talk about money? Do this for me, Rafi, because we go back to the beginning together. Talk about what you feel, how God views as money, because we can go throughout specifically the Old Testament, and you see over and over and over again, I don't see many fiat currencies in the Bible. I'm just saying, I haven't seen it. What is your take on? We call it God's money, right? That's literally what we call it, God's money, because that's what it is. There is no other currency that God wanted us to use. Am I wrong?
I don't think there's a divine imperative on gold and silver as money. I think it's a little bit different than that. The word money is just a word that we use for a commodity that happens to be the most liquid. So God gave us many, many different liquid commodities, right? There's a lot of commodities that are liquidity, meaning through time and through transactions. Right. So what makes gold and silver so liquid is that you can't really damage them. Silver tarnishes, but that you can fix that in like very quickly. And they never go bad. So basically all of the gold that has ever been mined is still above ground, basically. Look, but even if you go very, very early into Genesis, even before the Garden of Eden, there's these random verses about gold. Right. And it's just like sticking out there like sore thumbs. Like, why are you talking to me about gold? Right. Like the gold of that land is good. Like, right. Okay, so what? But what's the point? I think the point of that is that God is saying, like, I'm setting up everything. I'm setting up the Garden of Eden. I'm setting up, commodities for exchange here. Yeah. Because they're very good for that, and everything's going to work. Like, I'm making it so you have everything that you need. That's good. Yeah. Right? Don't get too fancy. The other imperative on I wouldn't say imperative. The other place where gold and silver show up prominently is we're talking about the Passover Seder before we started recording. Like, what was the commandment that the people of Israel had to do? It was a commandment for every one of them. but before they slaughtered the Pesach sacrifice in their homes, which is basically saying to the Egyptians, "Your God is nothing. We're going to slaughter it and eat it and barbecue it, and you're going to smell it, and there's nothing you can do about it." Before they did that, they were commanded by Moses, who was commanded by God, to tell the people of Israel to go into every one of their houses and ask for the gold and silver, like get your payment.
Yeah.
And whose gold and silver really was that? Well, it was the gold and silver that was collected by Joseph hundreds of years before.
That's really
when everyone
good,
came to
Rafi.
Egypt. When everyone came to Egypt and they didn't have any food, so Joseph knew what was going to happen.
Come on.
And he said, "Look, give me your silver, and I'll give you food," because I knew this was going to happen. He was the first stacker, and so we just got the money back. So we got the money back. So he's saying, like, if you want a stable society, this is what you have to use. Doesn't mean you can't use a derivative. Doesn't mean you can't have debt. Doesn't mean you can't use paper if you want to. But don't lie about it.
That's good.
Don't create more. Don't create more derivatives than you have money. It's the money that's that is the holy thing that is created by God.
That's really good.
You create the derivatives. Fine, create the derivatives. Build a house. Do what you want, but don't lie.
Right.
That's really good. You know, we try to explain to people what, the properties of money. And I'm sure you've been over this. Divisibility, portability, durability, recognizability, and scarcity. High value in relation to volume and weight. This is a really great book that I recommend for anybody. This is by Gary North.
It's an easy read, Honest Money.
Honest Money. And it gives out a biblical blueprint for banking and money. And it takes you back into the Torah, especially there, and then and some of the prophets. Isaiah talks about it a lot. But with the fiat, the way I kind of explain it is when I read in Leviticus, you shall do no injustice in judgment. In measurement of length, weight, or volume, you shall have just balance, just weights, a just ephah, and a just hin. Who knows what those are? Maybe you do.
They're volume and weight measurements.
Got you.
Like for liquids and solids.
Okay. And I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt. And when I look at the fiat dollar, it is in direct contradiction to this, because it's what they used to do with silver, as I'm sure you're aware, is they used to clip it, right? So they would
as a way of cheating,
kind of clip it, take the edges off, and then it would get a little bit lighter and get a little bit lighter. And so people would carry around actual measuring, weights, and people would like maybe pad their weights or make them lighter so that, the real money is, is heavier or lighter or whatever. And there's I don't know how many times he says this, but God says it so many times. He really hates when you cheat with money. Like, he really hates it. Do you have, like, as in a rabbinical school, did they teach you why God hates that so much?
No. It was more, we learned Talmud and more of logical deduction on where Jewish law comes from. But you should know that Jewish law, at least Mishnaic law in Second Temple times, we had a silver standard. It wasn't a gold standard. It was a silver standard. And it's interesting that the verse that you quoted, the end of it is the signature is Ani Hashem Asher Tzitich Meretz Mitzrayim. I am the Lord your God that took you out of the land of Egypt. So from there, the rabbis infer that whoever cheats on their weights and measures is like denying that the exodus from Egypt ever took place.
Wow. I love that.
And so you quoted Isaiah. So in the first chapter of Isaiah, I think it's verse 21, it could be verse 20. He says your silver has become dross.
Yeah.
Right. And that can be interpreted as poetic, and on a level it is poetic, because Isaiah is a book mostly of poetry, very very literarily flowery. But there is one rabbi by the name of the Malbim, 19th century rabbi, that says no, it's not necessarily poetic. He's being literal here, because Isaiah in the verses before that is asking himself, like, I'm looking at this people. Isaiah is already in the time of the late First Temple, when things are already starting to get shaky, right? And the society is already being corrupted. He's asking, how did this happen? how did Jerusalem turn into a society of murderers? This society that was supposed to be based on one God that took them out of Egypt and then stand for justice and freedom and liberty. How did it become like? How did this happen?
Yeah.
And so his answer is, how did it happen? It happened slowly. It happened because you cheated on your silver and you clipped the coins and you started selling it just so you could get a little bit more profit. And from there, it plants a seed, and it takes generations. It takes hundreds of years for that evil seed where you're just trying to save a little bit money or water down your wine or clip your silver,
Oh, wow.
right? From there, you get used to it, and then it becomes legitimate. And then other people start cheating too, so you have to clip even more to stay in front of the competition. And then you're all just selling a bunch of garbage. And then you have to start murdering to get your fill.
Wow.
And it just gets worse and worse and worse. But that's where it all starts.
Wow.
That's why if you want it, look, spending cuts and what Trump is doing, it's all good. It's all good, but if you don't get rid of the poison root, it's all going to come back worse.
And what do you see as the poison root? Like when you're looking at the poison root, how would you explain that? Because I think I know what you're going to say, but I want to hear you say it. Explain it.
Look, it's that theft is legitimate. Like
Wow.
the whole Keynesian movement, right? From inflationary
really good.
cycles have happened again and again and again in American history. It wasn't like for 200 years everything was fine and then there was a fiat dollar. It's like theft was more decentralized, right? So the thieves lost money and then the honest people were able to survive. But then the government got more and more powerful, and they just started centralizing the theft.
Right.
So it looks more stable because a more centralized theft system, you have a bigger pool to steal from. So every time, if you have a humongous pool and you take like a cup, you can't see it. You can't see it go down. But then eventually you empty the pool and you got nothing.
Which is where we're at. I mean, literally, they've been doing that with the dollar for the past 100 plus years. And now we're at the bottom of the barrel of the value of the dollar. Like it's imagine they were cutting, they just started shaving and shaving and shaving. One of our biggest things that we love are the Pilgrim Forefathers in Plymouth, Massachusetts. And there's the Plymouth Rock there. And you go to visit it and there's this big portico above it. And when people go and visit it, they're always like, that's it. And because it's not that big. I want to say maybe it's like 10 by 10 or something. And you would think that it's going to be much, much bigger. Well, over the years from I would say like 1640, people would go and they would chisel off hunks because they wanted to take a piece of the Plymouth Rock with them. And now there's not much left. And so when you look at the dollar, I'm holding up a silver dollar for the
if you
for the
actually
podcast
could
listeners.
hold it, I think it would be much better.
What I mean is, like, they've been
sliver.
shaving it and shaving it and shaving it. Like, if you were to take a dollar bill and cut it into 100 strips,
Exactly.
right? You would have 3 left. Like, that's all that's left. And we started out with a whole dollar bill. And so I love that you keep focusing on that it's a lie. It's a lie. It's a lie. They cause you to believe that something is. We were just talking yesterday about when we were kids. I mean, you've been in Israel since 2007, but like in the 90s, I think we're probably roughly the same age. In the 90s, you could go to Wendy's and you could get a biggie fry for $1. You could get a biggie drink for $1. You could get a sandwich for $1. And they've been trying to hang on to that because it sounds so great to sell something for $1. But even McDonald's had to up to $2 because
$3.
Because it's like you can't do it the same anymore because the dollar isn't the same as it was when we were kids. We used to be able to go to the grocery store and you could walk out of the grocery store with a cart full of groceries for $25. And now, and I'm like, I don't feel that old. Like that's kind of now you can't get out of the store with a cart full of groceries for less than 100. And so we are this frog in boiling water and they're lying to us. Rafi, maybe you could talk about, and I know that our viewers know this in part, but I feel like coming out of a different mouth, it might sink in better. How inflation is the silent tax, how they are skimming off and they are taking every single time it gets cycled through, they are taking, and we are the ones that get the short end of the stick. Could you explain that in a way that maybe if people aren't getting it, they could get it?
Yeah. Okay. So look, if I it it's when they print money, it's not like they just like invent dollars and then spread them around, right? How it works is that the Federal Reserve buys the debt of the Treasury, and then they give dollars to the Treasury, and then the Fed has the debt, and then those dollars are ultimately owed back to the central bank. So it's a loop that keeps feeding on itself and can never close.
Oh my gosh.
Now, what if theoretically, if they were to, let's say, put $5,000 in everyone's bank account overnight, then there'd be no inflation. It would just be higher prices, but everyone would have more purchasing power because they'd have more dollars, so the prices would just go up for everything, by let's say, 0.5%. If everyone has 5,000 more dollars in the bank account, nobody loses anything. You just have to spend more dollars on the same stuff that you have more dollars to spend, so it's fine, right? The whole problem with inflation is that it makes that the government gets the money first from the Fed, and then they spend it. And the act of them spending it is what increases the money supply.
That's
and
good.
Once the money supply increases, before they spend it, even the minute they spend that money on bombing Ukraine or sending Israel money, which they shouldn't be doing, or whoever they're sending money to, transgender surgeries, just look up Doge. You can find all the
Right,
things
right.
they're spending money on.
It has been an amusement, yes.
Okay, so the act of spending that money is what raises the money supply. But when they spend it, prices are what they were before they spent it. Because then once they spend it, prices go up for everyone else. So the inflationary process inherently richens, what's the word?
Enriches.
Yeah.
Enriches the people that get it first. And through the mechanism of the system, the people that get it first are the Treasury and everything they spend it on and all their cronies. By definition, that's what inflation does. And as the money cycles through, the people who get it last are the wage earners and people who are doing honest business and honest work.
So it's in their interest for the system to continue, but we're living in a house of cards. I want to maybe shift our conversation, so you're endgame investor, right? Let's, do some hypotheses, I think, as we move forward, because I think this is always really fun. None of us know exactly what's going to happen other than the house of cards is going to fall. Like, we know that much, and we know that there's going to be a lot of pain involved for a lot of people. I was so impressed with you in the interview that we watched the other day. You're like, and people will die. You just said it so matter of fact.
So bluntly.
You got that too. And lots of people will die. And I was like, well, that's true. He just said it like that.
I mean, they vaccinated me. It could be that I'm on the spectrum and I'm autistic or something.
No, it was great. But I do want to I want to give people some hope, because I do think that there is hope to be had. It's not hopium. I think that there's real hope to be had in the midst of all of this. So when we're talking about, the house of cards that they have built since 1913 with the petrodollar, the paper dollar, the fiat dollar, all of this kind of ridiculous, the cycle that you talked about, how, you deposit $10 into the bank and then they can lend $1 million, or whatever. Like, this whole system literally cannot sustain itself. In 2008, it should have completely collapsed. They went and put up a bunch of
that was
props.
kind of, we were already gold and silver people from her homeschool books when she was a teenager, but our grandma had died that year, and we were trying to help our uncle, who was the estate executor, sell her stuff, and we were a GM family, and my grandfather had his
So
retirement in
much money
GM.
in GM.
And so I don't know if you're aware, but GM and Ford went to zero.
Yes.
I don't know if anybody knows, but
And we
zero
kept telling
is
him to
nothing.
sell, and we would watch it drop by $20 and $20 and $20. And then it's down to $8. And we were telling my uncle, we're like, sell now before it gets to
We
zero,
were screaming in his ear, like, this is not getting any better. It's like, I think over a third of what she had was in this GM stock. And I'm just like, you don't understand. You got to sell now or there's nothing. And there wasn't much left by the time he finally
I think
sold.
he literally sold it at $9.
And my mother and my uncle who lives with us, they needed what my grandma had to, sustain her, because my uncle's disabled. And it was, I gotta tell, it was I'm like, stocks are evil. I watched it just disintegrate. Now there was some PG stock, P&G stocks, and they restabilized and things like that. But GM and Ford, they died. They died a death.
And so the government
bought 2 car companies.
Literally brought what should have happened in 2008 is everything that you're predicting is going to happen should have happened then. It
should
didn't.
have. It did. Yeah.
But I don't think that they can prop it up again. So maybe you could talk about, obviously I'm not going to ask for a timeline because none of us really know. It could happen today. It could happen, 10 years from now, but I think it's going to be much sooner than later. And then how you see that unfolding. And I know this is a very broad, question here. You can do with it whatever you want. And what people can do to kind of help not just physically prepare, but mentally and emotionally prepare for what's ahead.
I don't have an exact timeline, and I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I again, going back to Israelite history, I track. I know the First Temple period more than most Jews. I actually read the Bible. That's the problem with a lot of Jews. They just don't know what's in the book.
Right. That's good.
But it seems to me that that the Western world is in a very, very late First Temple period.
That's good.
Because you see the kings. You had these really good kings and then really bad kings and really good kings and then really bad kings, and they keep changing policy. And the last really good king that we had, his name was Yoshiyahu or Josiah. And he reigned for about 31 years, I think. And he went on like a Trump-like blitz against idolatry.
That's so good.
No, you saw it because his son was his father was very evil. He was a mass murderer, and his grandfather was a mass murderer, reigned for 55 years. And his father was also insane, and perverted, and then Yoshiyahu just like changed everything and destroyed idolatry and renovated the temple, and he even brought in whoever was left over from the northern kingdom that had already been destroyed by Assyria and brought them in and said, come and celebrate Pesach with us, come and celebrate Passover with us. And it's interesting. Like, I don't know, I'm going into like a tangent here, but I have a friend of mine who believes that he's from one of the northern tribes of Zebulon.
That's
so
cool.
he's like this. He's like really relaxed and a nice guy. He doesn't really worry about much. Like there's war here and there's rockets, and he's like, oh, it'll be fine. Don't worry about it. So I'm like, so I realized one day, I'm like, his name is Yishai. So I said, Yishai, you know what? If you're really from Zebulon, like if that's your genes, then imagine like when they were being saved by Josiah after the Assyrians had already killed all of them, and like there's just a few stragglers left, and then Josiah invites you to a barbecue in Jerusalem, and then you're like, oh yeah, sure, whatever, like
That's awesome.
fine.
Why not? Sounds fun.
So then like I see Trump as a Josiah-like figure. That he's ripping everything apart as much as he can and destroying as much of the evil as he can. Now, I'm not saying he's Josiah. I'm just using
I don't think he had the same penance of like, look at the law, look at what we've done. Yeah. Like, but yeah, I get it.
Yeah. So I'm just using it as a figure to.
It's good.
Okay. So I think that's where we are, and unfortunately, Josiah, he was a great king, but he could not save the republic. He was killed in a war, and after that everything just fell apart. But what he did do was that he packed away what was still good and worthy, so that the Israelites still had a legacy to go back to after the exile. Wow. So I don't think Trump can stop the endgame. That's not good. Possible. It's not possible. But what he can do is remind Americans who they are and where they come from and why they were so good to begin with. And that's what I think he's doing in his crude way. And I think it's great. So I think after him, America is going to fall apart.
Wow.
And now the question is, at least politically, it doesn't mean there's going to be a zombie apocalypse or anything like that. But I do think it's going to get very, very rough in the big, deep blue liberal cities, because those people they've lost touch entirely with God and with what made America great. I think it'll be better in the suburbs, and I think it'll be relatively okay in the country.
Yeah.
So my advice would be, it's not advice, I don't give advice, but what I would do if I was in America is I would say, get a homestead like you girls.
Yeah.
That's the safest thing. If you can't do that, get out of the big cities. Get out of Chicago. Get out of LA. Get out of New York. Get out of these big cities because they're empty. They're spiritually empty places, and they're going to be dangerous as hell. When there's no
Literally
more
though,
dollars.
like that's not just a curse word in that moment. Like literally, they will turn into this is a very dark, spiritually void place. It will be hell for those people in the cities.
So I think we could have anywhere from months to a year or two. I don't see it going farther than that because we have.
You mean after Trump or like from today?
From today. From today. I mean, I don't know. I could be wrong on the timing because
no, but what makes I'm curious about what makes you think that. Like, regardless, nobody holds you to it. You're not a prophet. Like, we can all have our own opinions, but like, what's leading you? What are your warning signs?
It's technical. I look at a lot of what I look at in the endgame investor is the deep dark monetary sewers where trillions of dollars are traded every night, and so this is the base of the fiat pyramid. Right? It's not really fiat. There's no such thing as fiat. There's debt-based money, and the debt can't be paid back, so it gets erased. Again, fiat is impossible. But in the sewers, in the monetary sewers, last night, $2.4 trillion were traded. And what does that mean? It means that banks that had $2.4 trillion worth of debt, treasuries, right? They need other banks needed cash, and so the banks with the extra treasuries, the debt, dollar-denominated debt, gave it to the banks with extra cash, and they got that money for the night in order to close business for the day. $2.4 trillion a night. Where do those dollars come? What are those dollars? Those dollars are called bank reserves. That's all the extra money that started in 2008 from all the dead debt that couldn't be paid back. So like when debt can't be paid back, either it defaults and the money supply shrinks, or the Fed says, well, we'll buy all that garbage. And then you have this like dead debt that stays in the banks in the form of reserves that can't really be loaned out because it's based on dead debt. It never gets loaned out again, and you get this like big backup. So
I'm gonna. This is one of those things. The overnight trading market.
Yeah.
I'm honestly do not understand.
When we first discovered it, I want to say like 3 or 4 years ago. It was somewhere around COVID.
Like I can't wrap my brain around it.
What are they doing every night?
I feel like a thinking person. Can you just go over it one more time? I have tried to wrap my brain around this.
But it happens every night.
I really just don't understand it.
We don't ever explain this to our viewers because we can't.
And then you've got this, I'm going to be honest. You said there's this dead debt that can't be, and it's like salt that's lost its savor. Like you can't do anything with it. Like there's the actual dollars you can't do anything with.
It's not that you can't do anything with it. It's that there is no demand for it because the business can't be sustained. There's $3 trillion of money that used to be debt that wasn't paid back, so the Fed had to come in and buy it all. That's all on the Fed's balance sheet now. And on the other side of that stuff on the Fed's balance sheet are the actual dollars that are out in the system, right? Because debt and dollars are two sides of the same coin, so they represent each other.
They've bought the debt with no way of recovering it.
They bought the debt, put the dollars into the system. Now there's all these extra dollars in the sewers that can't be loaned out because the structure of the economy as it currently exists can't support all that business.
I get you. I get you.
Okay.
There are not enough people who need the loans, the big loans, or because of interest rates. Is it because of interest rates? Because I know a lot of people are, builders aren't doing things that they used to do because, if you were at, what was the interest rates, like 2%, like almost zero at sometimes, like they were just borrowing and building like crazy. And then with the interest rates, as soon as they go up and up and up, then it's like there's no market for it.
Yeah, but if the interest rates go down now, then you'll have hyperinflation situation, which is which is what's going to happen when the overnight lending market freezes up. That's where I'm getting into the timing here.
Okay.
Because
why would it freeze up?
Okay, it's very simple. There's all these repos that go on every night. Now it's 2.4 trillion. They go higher and higher. Every night, 2.4 trillion. They go higher and higher slowly. They trend higher and higher. because more people are borrowing and they need to fund their trades or whatever it is because they need to show that they're increasing their bottom line. So they borrow through this overnight market in order to clip pennies from like these huge mega trades where they're it gets too technical.
I get it. I get it. You're just getting pennies on the dollar, but you're still
you're taking let's say $100 billion, making a very safe trade on a treasury, and then netting a penny on each contract, and then you end up with like $10 million on a trade that's basically free.
Wow.
Okay, so all the banks are doing this because, as I said before, with Isaiah, that if you start a culture of watering down the wine or clipping the silver, everyone's going to follow you and do the same thing, and you're just going to poison each other. So when the bank reserves, right, the bank reserves that are funding this overnight stuff, they're shrinking by the week by about $20 billion a week. That's called quantitative tightening. That's when the Fed takes assets on its balance sheet, sells it into the economy, takes the dollars back, retires them into a black hole of nothing.
No.
Right. So that's them shrinking their balance sheet.
Right.
Right.
And that means if they shrink the balance sheet, the bank reserves go down. But the repos are still going up. If the bank reserves that fund the repos are going down and the bank and the repos are going up, you're going to hit you're going to hit a wall. And when you hit a wall, you can't do the repos anymore. And all the trades, all the overnight trades that rely on this $2.5 trillion every night, there's going to be no more dollars and they're all going to fall down. It's going to be one thing overnight at some point soon in the next few months.
And you've got Sally down the street working at the dollar store. and she has no idea what they have created. And they make it so difficult.
To understand.
I think even Thomas Jefferson said that all the laws that we have, even the Constitution, they have to be known and easily understood, right? The same thing with like the IRS, which is completely illegal. The reason why it stacks and stacks and stacks is not to catch you and I. It's to cover what they are doing, right?
Yes.
They make all their rules and all their regulations so that they can have their real estate and have their write-offs and all these things. It's for them. Then that's what you're saying. If people understood the only movie that really came out, the Wolves of Wall Street, and some of is that the one that was about the 2008 crash? That's the only.
No, I forgot what it was. The Big Short. The Big Short.
Oh, that's it. Yeah.
The Big Short. That was the only one that actually I think put in layman's terms so people could even like a titch. And you have to sit there and like take notes, right?
I did.
To try to understand how these overnight reevaluations happen, because it's I feel like it's just not logical, so your brain can't wrap around it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that
it is logical. It's just extremely convoluted.
Okay.
Oh, that's good. That's a good word for it. So you're saying at some point here we reach endgame, and then at that point, so we don't want it to happen because we know people will die, as Rafi has said,
and be hurt,
and people will be hurt, and there will be a lot of suffering. But at the same time, when you're living a lie, like we have been living, I don't want it to continue. So you want the break to happen so that we can start to heal, because we can't start to heal until the break happens. So what are your thoughts on that? Are you in the same camp of this, like it would be better to just get the break over with?
I've been saying that it's obviously the sooner it happens, the better, because the longer it takes to happen, the worse it will be. But this is such a huge, gargantuan, monstrous system that none of us can control when it will fall. It's all in God's hands now, and God will God will be with us when it falls, and we can just hope to rely on His help to get us through it. But it doesn't mean you don't do nothing. It doesn't mean do nothing. You have to always balance hishtadlus, or you have to make an effort, and then when you can no longer make any effort, or when you feel overstretched, like you're like, okay, God, can you fill in the rest? And then He'll help.
So good.
It's like how my wife described giving birth. It starts out hard, it gets harder. You start screaming, you can't handle this anymore, and then when you feel like you can't do it anymore, you ask God for help. He helps you, and then you give birth.
Wow.
That's how life is in whatever cycle. It's like, giving birth is like I'm not a woman, but it's just a very contracted cycle of life, and that's how it is, and then everything turns out okay. But you have to have money. You have to have probably some ammunition just to protect yourself. You have to have a community
That's
of
good.
sane people who you can talk to and have shared values, so that you can embrace each other and support each other when this happens. You can't be on your own. You have to
That's
reach
good.
out and you have to make connections. So
I love that.
community is really, really the most important thing. Community, then money, skills, and stay calm.
Oh,
That's
that's
really
good.
good.
That's kind of a different mantra than we usually share,
Lynette's.
Lynette's,
But it's
food,
like it, but I
shelter,
just like that
barterability.
we need
With
to add stay calm.
stay calm. I like the stay calm. So finally here, as we wrap things up, what do you make recommendations on, how much to have in silver, how much to have in gold, or what, you mentioned ammunition. With your investing, what do you tell people to do? And I know you have your own gold and silver dealer, so you can go and tell people about that.
So I tell people to do whatever helps them sleep best at night.
Okay.
That's very broad, but like if you look the with gold and silver, gold gold will be the most stable, right? It'll go up and up and up. It'll go down a little bit in some kind of deflationary scare, but it won't last long. And you'll be able to sleep the most or sleep the best with gold in terms of your net worth. With silver, it's more risky because it's going to go crazy. It's going to go up and down very extremely. And in a scenario where the dollar completely collapses, silver will be the best investment, but it won't be the best investment for long. Um, Silver will return to its highest value when there is zero faith in the dollar at all, because when there's zero faith in the dollar, there's no gold derivative. If there's no gold derivative, you can't hand in paper to buy groceries. You need to use silver coins because nobody trusts anything else.
Yeah.
Right. And at that point, silver will have a maximum value. But once a gold derivative system starts up again, silver's value will fall quickly. So you'll have a little bit of a window of time. So if you want to play that game, you can. But I don't recommend having mostly silver. What I do for myself is I have enough silver, for to survive, let's say, a year of endgame scenario, and the rest I put in gold and some gold stocks if I want to play that. Um, and people ask me questions like, I need to know your situation to tell you what I would do in that situation. How much money do you have? How much? What do you want to risk? And then I can try to help, but I don't give any advice to anybody. What I really try to do is to help people understand the concepts so that no matter what happens in the market, you still understand intellectually where you are. You are at the base of the pyramid, and the floor is not going to shake. The pyramid's going to shake. The floor is not going to shake so much. It will, but it's not. But in an earthquake, you want to be on the ground. You don't want to be on the top floor of a building.
Right. Where you had put the cryptocurrencies.
Yeah.
I'm just, yeah, I had
I'm
to throw that
just
in there.
curious here. Last question, just on a personal note for you. Do you have a community where you can grow food where you're at?
Well, I'm in the Golan, and Israel is a tiny little country. So the farming situation or the farming network here is much tighter. My food comes from pretty close, and I grow vegetables in my backyard, and I have some chickens. But
Oh,
I'm not
awesome.
I'm not imagining to myself like if there's an endgame scenario and everyone's starving to death. I'm not it's going to be hard to defend my backyard. So
But it's more
so
community
I
based, right? Like
what?
it's more community based. Like you guys grow locally.
Yeah, not exactly locally, but on American standards, yeah, locally. I mean, when
Yeah.
you go when let's say somebody in a big city goes to the vegetable aisle, where are those vegetables coming from? A lot of them are coming from like Argentina
Right.
or South America, very, very far away. Here they're coming from a few miles.
Wow.
That's really local.
Yeah.
Like that's key to community, right?
Right.
If you
Well, they're not
have
coming
your-
from Gaza. They're not coming from Syria. They all hate us.
Right.
right. So
true.
that's what I was wondering. Like you guys are you guys pretty self-sustaining with a lot of your fruits and vegetables?
No, not in that level. I have fruit trees and I have
No, I
vegetables.
meant Israel.
Oh, Israel?
Yeah.
It's hard to say what is self-sustaining
Okay.
because once there's an end game and all the prices change, the entire economic system is going to have to be restructured. But that's the importance of the stackers, right? If we have the monetary like think of it. This is the last thing I'll say. So you don't want to when you stack gold and silver, don't do it to save your family and save yourself. Like the division of labor needs a money to survive. Humanity, society cannot survive without a division of labor. If what people use as a money, which is inflated, and it's dying, if that all goes away, then the division of labor is going to need a money, and it's going to need you to spend your gold and silver and to spread it around so that people have an idea of what prices are supposed to be, so that they can continue some kind of a division of labor, so people don't, so the minimum amount of people starve to death and die.
Right.
You're going to save lives by spending your gold, especially your silver.
Yes.
When silver goes to 15 to 1, the dollar is dead. It's your responsibility, your moral duty to spend money and get that money out so that people have money to participate in a division of labor so they don't die.
That is exactly where we're at. That's the desire of my sister and I when we were trying to teach gold and silver on a practical level. Like we were able to teach it to, we actually went into a high school and taught it to a group of high schoolers.
It was a Montessori school. It wasn't a public school.
But it was amazing because they got it. And they were all liberals. All the kids were liberals. They were super woke liberal kids. And when we explained the monetary system, they all came up to us later and were like, where can I buy gold and silver? I was like, we did it. We explained it to them, how they've been stealing from them. But, here, like in America, we've been working for the sound money movement in order to make gold and silver a legal tender, like it's not. But in order to take the capital gains off of it, right? A dollar is a dollar is a dollar. So what I tell people, and I explain it like this. Okay, so they're telling me, and they've written that this is worth $1. Okay, so if I pay you in this, okay, let's say
you do a $100 job.
Let's say you do a $100 job and I pay you, 3 of these. Okay. Maybe a few extra on the side. If you only need to put on your taxes $3, that's legal. Now, of course, if you go to sell that for fiat, then some states do not. State taxes don't demand capital gains on gold and silver. There's all kinds of sound money movements. Federally, you're supposed to pay capital gains on selling that, but they're the ones, and especially if you've got like the $10 gold coins or whatever, if you want to pay somebody for a bigger job, I'm encouraging people to start now paying people with gold and silver. To start if you can, to pay and to get used to it,
because it's like calling their bluff, right?
Right.
You're the one that told me this is worth $1. You're the one that printed it on here. You're the one that hasn't held up your end of the bargain. Like Leah said, even the $20 gold pieces, that's what they have put on there. And so that's kind of our pushback in the system.
And if you don't need to convert, so like if you have somebody come to do a job at your house and you're like, hey, are you going to save any of this? Is this ever going is whatever's going to go in savings? Can I pay this to you in gold and silver? Because then on your taxes, you're just paying face value because they said that this is $1. They said that was a $10 gold coin. Okay. They said that. They have done that. And so that is a way, we were talking about this with Lynette, and we explained to people, how can we begin now to pull our money out of the system, to pull our, to begin to, I don't know, to push back on the system. And I do think that there is a significant spiritual aspect to it as well. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, there definitely is a spiritual aspect to this. Like when you pay in gold and silver, when you have gold and silver, I do this with my kids. I pay them little mercury dimes for
awesome.
Chores that have to be done.
You already do it.
Yeah, my kids, I keep it within the family. But like in the end game, people are going to be using gold and silver, and no taxes are going to be collected because it will be impossible.
Right.
Because you need thugs who an army of thugs to collect taxes,
right,
and they won't be paid because the dollar will be dead. So everyone will be on their own. But there is a big spiritual awakening when you put the physical world and the spiritual world in parallel and don't cross them. Where human beings are both physical and spiritual beings. We're on two planes at once. So if you don't confuse that, you have a lot better mental health.
That's good.
and try it. I mean, I wouldn't say spend silver on everything. You want, like, a store for yourself and your family, and
Hmm.
the reason, let's say in Weimar, Germany, that houses went for $100 bill, which represents 5 ounces of gold back then. You could hand $100 bill in 1923 and get a nice house in Berlin.
Wow.
Why? Why are the prices that way? Because there's such a desperation for real money, because without it, people are going to starve. That's how cheap everything became. So yeah, exercise, practice, pay in gold and silver, but make sure you're saving for the end game for when you really need to pay in gold and silver.
No,
I
that's
love it.
really
That's
good.
great.
All right,
That's
so
perfect.
Rafi, where can people find you? I've got up your YouTube channel right here. I'm going to show everybody so they can find you on YouTube, which is Endgame Investor, and then your name right there, which I love your logo there. It's super cool. Rafi Farber. So what about your Substack? How do they find your Substack?
My Substack, endgameinvestor.substack.com, or you can go to substack.com and type in Endgame Investor. And I put out 3 articles a week on what's going on in the gold and silver markets, and about once a month I put out a long philosophical piece on monetary theory. For example, why we never left the gold standard, why silver is so important, why the state did not invent money, money invented the state.
Oh, wow.
Things like that give people a good intellectual backing to what exactly is going on here, and why it's so important to just continue the line, keep stacking.
I love this
I
one,
absolutely-
2,900 and counting, even as tariff threats abate, something else is brewing. I like that you take on those types of things. That sounds amazing. And then they can also find you on Patreon, right?
Yeah, patreon.com/endgameinvestor, where I go into biblical lessons on money and economics and government,
That's awesome.
with a rabbinic base on Second Temple period, mostly, what they thought, how the monetary system worked back then, based on verses, and how it's supposed to work.
Oh, I love that. And then, of course, where we were following you originally is over on Twitter, Rafi Farber, Rafi Farber, over there on Twitter. You're doing phenomenal work over there. So, Rafi, thank you for coming on our program. We have had a blast. I hope you'll come back again. And you do have, I would like for you to advertise for who is your gold and silver dealer that you like to recommend.
I work with Miles Franklin. That's Andy Shechtman. He lives in Boca. And I just mentioned the Endgame Investor, and the good thing about Miles Franklin, why I work with them, is that they don't do numismatics. I'm not against numismatics. It's okay to have numismatic gold, but people have to understand that most of the value of numismatics is in the art of the thing. It's gold. It's art made out of gold and silver. So you're buying art made out of gold and silver. And
For anybody that doesn't know what
yeah.
numismatics are, can you tell them, please?
Yeah, numismatics, like rare coins, rare collectible coins. And it's okay if you want to collect art, but that's what you should know. That's what you're doing. And Miles Franklin only sells the bullion, so it's very low premiums, good prices, and I trust them.
That's great. That's awesome. All right. Well, blessings to you and your family. And we're so glad that you came. And like I said, we want to have you back again. Guys, remember, it's not just a conspiracy theory if it's actually the truth. We love you. God loves you. God bless. And we'll see you next time right here from resistancechicks.com. Take care.
I got booked for suspected assault. And that's when I was questioned. My weapon was confiscated, and I underwent 5 hours of questioning. That same day, an article came out about me in Israel's biggest national newspaper, Ynet. Little did this woman know as it was happening, or while she was reporting this to the media, that I had recorded the entire event. And I'm going to read that article about what supposedly happened in juxtaposition with the video that I took of what actually happened. So you'll see how much of a lie media coverage actually is in the Western world, and in Israel in particular. This is the article that came out in Ynet about me and my wife on November 7th, 2021. The headline reads, Al takshivu le'eichman, ne'emenet korona b'Katzrin sirva lachnis hore v'lo tav yarok lagan v'hutkefa. Do not listen to Eichmann. Eichmann is a Nazi that was executed by the Israeli government in 1960, who was basically in charge of administering the final solution to the Jewish problem. Ne'emenet korona b'Katzrin, the Ne'emenet korona, the corona enforcer in Katzrin, refused to allow parents to enter without a green pass to the kindergarten and was attacked. Less than a week after she was appointed to the task, Alice Ben Shushan was forced to deal with parents who refused to accept the guidelines of the health ministry. I requested a green pass. The father entered by force and began to scream. In protest of the occurrence, studies, or meaning the kindergartens in Katrin, will open only at 9:30. So what happened according to this article? First of all, that's bad Hebrew. It's really paga bi b'chazeh. Anyway, the Israelis don't know how to speak. It says that I went into the gate by force, I screamed, and I was rioting and wildness, and I hit her in the chest. The kindergartens in Katrin will begin at 9:30 in protest over an attack on the Corona enforcer, Alice Ben Shushan, that refused to admit on Friday to the kindergarten a father that did not present a green pass and broke into the gan violently. The father hit her in the chest and wildly, hitpareya, how do you translate hitpareya? Flailed wildly or something in screams in the gan while his wife was screaming to the kids and said, "Do not listen to Eichmann." The event on Friday began when Ben Shushan, who was appointed only last week as the Corona enforcer, stood at the entrance to the kindergarten, and two parents came to them with their daughter. I asked for a green pass, but he looked at me as if he wanted to eat me. Ben Shushan said, "I'm sorry, Ben Shushan. Looking at you like I want to eat you? No thanks."
No, I will not make out with you. Did you hear that? This girl wants to make out with me in the middle of class. You got chlorophyll man up there talking about God knows what. All she's talking about is making out with me. I'm here to learn, everybody, not to make out with you. Go on with the chlorophyll.
He entered by force through the gate. I stood at the entrance in the passageway to the gan to prevent him from entering, and he acted violently. And with his elbow, he hit me hard in the chest to the point where I doubled over. Let's see what actually happened, shall we?
Okay, tough. לא. אוקיי, טוב. סליחה, אדוני, תצא בבקשה. לא. תצאו בבקשה. אתם לא יכולים להיכנס לפה. נכנסתי. תצא בבקשה. לא. תצא בבקשה. לא. אתה יוצא. סליחה. Ben Shushan says that the couple went into the gan and sat down by one of the tables of the children. He started to walk around crazily and screaming. Okay. אני לא רוצה לעשות שום דבר, אני רק רוצה להיות בשקט. אני מבקשת לצאת החוצה. בסדר. לא עכשיו. שמענו. עכשיו. לא. אתם לא יכולים להיכנס. בבקשה החוצה. His wife, in the meantime, screamed to the children that were very, very stressed out and said, "Do not listen to Eichmann."
Heil Hitler.
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 Their daughter cried hysterically. Let's see how terrified the children were and how my daughter was crying. As I said before, all charges against me have been dropped. I am now in the process of suing this woman and Ynet for libel against me and my family. I keep asking for the guidelines to the entrance of the kindergarten that day, and nobody can give me anything in writing. I have never worn a mask. I have never taken a PCR test. I have never been part of this from the beginning, and I intend never to be part of a medical tyranny. God was with me and my family that day. God will continue to be with me and my family, and to all of the brave souls who are fighting this with everything they have. The people on the other side are nothing but a bunch of cowards. And all we have to do is say one thing to them when they try to break up our families and tear our children away from us. This is Rafi of the Endgame Investor. The Endgame is not only regarding the economy and investments, it's regarding society and social behavior and the breakdown of social norms and common decency. But for however long it takes, I will stand up with the rest of my family and say, enough. If you'd like to support me, then consider signing up to be my patron on Patreon, where you will get a weekly video of biblical commentary on economic and monetary policy topics. or you can sign up for a 2-week free trial of my investment newsletter, The Endgame Investor. Link in the description below. And if any of you want to see the full unedited video of the event from start to finish, you can see it at the link in the description below. And of course, always remember, don't listen to Eichmann.
Heil Hitler! 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 You know Freddie Finkel. Heil Hitler! Heil Hitler! Heil Hitler! Heil Hitler! Heil Hitler! Heil Hitler! Heil Hitler!